repeatedly stated his desire to engage in violent jihad on behalf of the Islamic State of Iraq, otherwise known as ISIL.
A 20-year-old Kansas man is accused of plotting a bombing at Fort Riley inspired by ISIS. Good afternoon, I'm Brittany Pieper.
And I'm Amanda Weston. This afternoon, the U.S. Attorney's Office announced the arrest of John T. Booker Jr. He was apparently arrested while in the final stages of connecting what he thought was a car bomb near Fort Riley. Authorities say despite his plans, the device was not capable of exploding.
He has spent months developing and attempting to execute a plan that would result in his own death. It's alleged that he planned to pull the trigger of the explosives himself so that he would die in the explosion. It's alleged that he told another individual that detonating a suicide bomb was his #1 aspiration.
Booker is a former Army recruit. He faces several charges, including attempting to use a weapon of mass destruction and attempting to provide material support to ISIS. Officials say Booker had been booked under surveillance by the FBI and was questioned by officials last year.
The hitman in the Brian Daniels murder-for-hire case is now headed to prison. KOMU-8's Phil Bergman is live with your first look at local news to tell us about the decision.
Good afternoon. Now, a judge sentenced Casey Lewis to life in prison without the possibility of parole earlier today. Now, Casey Lewis is the hitman in the Brian Daniels murder-for-hire plot that's been taking place over the past 2 years. Now, during the reading of the sentence, Lewis was very quiet and didn't show too much emotion. His defense attorney requested a retrial, but Judge Gary Oxenhandler denied the motion. Oxenhandler went on to take the state's recommendation of a life sentence, a common sentence for someone convicted of first-degree murder. I talked to Lewis's defense attorney today after the decision, and he said this process has been tough since the verdict was released last week.
When the verdict was announced, I was standing right next to him, and his knees started to buckle. It looked like it looked like he got hit with a bat. I mean, he was just in complete shock.
The lawyer also told me that they do plan on appealing this decision, which will take place in 10 days from now. As well, today is exactly 2 years from when Brian Daniels was murdered in his home. Reporting live from Columbia, Phil Bergman, KOMU-8 News.
A fallen Columbia firefighter will receive a posthumous award later tonight in honor of his service. Firefighter Lieutenant Bruce Britt will receive the Edward Robb Award. Britt was killed trying to get students out of this building on MU's campus when the apartment's walkway collapsed. Britt's wife and daughter will accept the award on his behalf at the Boone County Republicans' annual Lincoln Day banquet being held in Columbia. Committee Chairman Rick Rowden said, quote, "There is no greater sacrifice than that made by Lieutenant Bruce Britt, and even though it has been a period of time, we are excited about keeping his memory alive." The award is named after Edward Robb, who was the late Boone County presiding commissioner and also a state rep.
A Columbia man's in jail today after authorities arrested him in relation to drug trafficking. Boone County Sheriff's deputies arrested Bradley David last night after issuing a search warrant of 3 locations associated with those operations. David was arrested on suspicion of trafficking drugs, possession of a stolen property, and unlawful possession of a firearm. Authorities found a stolen gun, cash, meth, and other drugs.
Tax day is less than a week away, and Columbia's largest employer is warning its employees of possible tax fraud schemes. MU sent out an email warning its employees and says scammers have already targeted several people. It says criminals are collecting information to file fraudulent tax returns on people's behalf. MU says employees are finding out they're victims when they go to file their taxes online, and the IRS tells them someone has already filed. The university says it doesn't believe its employees are being specifically targeted. It just wanted to give them a heads up.
We know that this particular type of fraud, identity theft related to tax returns, is something that is affecting people from across the country. And so we wanted to make sure that folks had the information in hand.
MU says current and retired employees affected by identity theft can use discounted credit monitoring services. For more information on how you can prevent and fight identity theft, visit our website, KOMU.com.
Spring was in full bloom today as Central Missouri Subcontracting Enterprises celebrated the Giving Garden's 5th year in Columbia. CMSE created the garden to provide more work opportunities for people with disabilities. The employees there plant, water, and transport plants in the garden. One volunteer says being involved with Giving Gardens is the most rewarding thing he's done.
It's just it's a feel-good feeling to work here and help serve these folks and to help supply a meaningful job for them that they can really enjoy. And so it doesn't get a whole lot better than that.
CMSE provides people with severe disabilities throughout Central Missouri with vocational training and employment opportunities.
Maryland police search for a man who shot a police officer, and another presidential candidate could soon enter the field. KOMU-TV Jasmine Lee has those stories and more in your First Nation report.
Maryland police are searching for the person who shot and critically injured a police officer this morning. The Anne Arundel County officer was on patrol when he stopped in at a 7-Eleven store in Annapolis overnight. That's when someone tipped him to a suspicious person outside. The officer called in the report and then approached the person and was shot in the upper body. 10 San Bernardino sheriff's deputies were placed on leave after video showed them brutally attacking a man who stole a horse in California. The whole thing was caught on video by the NBC Los Angeles helicopter. Deputies say he stole this horse from a group of people and tried and get away. Eventually he surrendered and a deputy tasers him. Another deputy arrives and starts attacking him. Eventually a few more deputies join in. A total of 11 deputies were present during the 2-minute-long beating. Officials in Oklahoma released new video of a school bus rollover in Tulsa. The accident happened on Wednesday with 10 students and 1 adult on board. You can see the bus start to swerve, and seconds later it hits a guardrail and then tumbles off the highway. Officials believe a combination of wet roads and speed may have played a role in the cause of the wreck. 4 students were transported to the hospital with non-life-threatening but serious injuries. The driver of the bus suffered a broken leg. Hillary Clinton could announce her presidential candidacy as early as Sunday. Clinton is expected to make the announcement on social media, with campaign stops then scheduled for next week. One of those stops will likely be in the first-in-the-nation caucus state of Iowa. Clinton enters this campaign as the favorite to win the Democratic nomination. And that's your first look around the nation.
Tornadoes rolled through northern Illinois last night, leaving behind lots of damage. 2 people were killed in those storms and at least 11 others taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Officials said about 70 homes were completely ripped off their foundations, and nearly every home in the district sustained some sort of damage. Immediately after the storm, about 15 different departments from around northern Illinois moved into the area to assist local emergency crews. Now, some of the areas struck by tornadoes in Illinois yesterday did not have a set of tornado sirens to warn residents that the storm was coming.
That lack of outdoor warning sirens is not uncommon, especially in sparsely populated regions. KOMU-8's Michael Dowden is in the studio after looking at Missouri's early warning system and how it stacks up.
Residents in Martinsburg, a city in Audrain County, celebrate the installation of a new outdoor warning system today. This marks the first time the city has had a working tornado siren in 5 years. Now, we had our own severe weather this week, which makes emergency warnings even more important. But outdoor warning systems are expensive, usually costing upwards of $9,000 a pop, making counties have to choose where these sirens are placed. Now, normally they're placed in more densely populated areas, but counties know they can't cover everyone. Boone County Fire says placement is important.
So it's very, very important. Tornadoes, unfortunately, come up very quickly, so that the warning system has to work very quickly and has to be effective.
Here, Boone County splits up its outdoor warning system into 3 parts. As you can see, most are focused in the central area of the county, centered around Columbia. But once you get outside of Columbia, sirens become more sparse. They center around smaller cities like Centralia, but they leave much of the rural area out of earshot. Callaway County has its own system. Their outdoor warning system is centered around some of the bigger cities like Fulton and Holt Summit.
Luckily, all of that severe weather is behind us for now, so let's send it over to Sydney for a check of our weekend forecast.
Thanks, Brittany. Our current temperatures are pretty warm out there. Right now, most part of us are in the 60s in central Missouri right now. 67 in Columbia, 68 over in Booneville, 67 in Moberly, and 66 over in Mexico. Still a little breezy out there, though, 18 miles an hour in Columbia. Overnight tonight, we are going to cool down quite a bit. We're looking at a low right around 42 degrees. But let's go ahead and take a look at our satellite and radar. Still pretty clear out there, lots of open sky. But for tonight, we're going to continue to cool down, low right around 42 degrees with mostly clear skies. Winds are also going to die down, coming from the west, 5 to 10 miles an hour. Coming up, I'll have a look at your 8-day forecast.
A small plane makes an emergency landing near Brazil in the ocean. Your world headlines coming up.
And later, how technology is really affecting your children in the classroom.
Right now, you're taking a live look over the Sedalia area. It's nice to see the sun out after the last few days. It's 5:09, and this is KOMU-8 News, first at 5.
In your world news, Vancouver police shot and killed a man who was in the middle of a stabbing rampage. Officers had responded to reports of a man stabbing people near a church in downtown Vancouver yesterday afternoon. Officers tried to take the suspect into custody, but he refused and started stabbing a woman. Police then shot and killed the suspect. The woman is currently in critical condition. A small plane had to make an emergency landing in the sea a little more than 200 yards away from a Rio de Janeiro beach today. The single-engine plane reported engine problems and landed in the ocean not long after takeoff. The two people on board were rescued by a fishing boat nearby, and neither were injured. After the rescue, the boat began towing the plane to shore. And rescue efforts are underway to save nearly 150 dolphins found beached in central Japan. The dolphins came ashore along a stretch of shoreline early in the morning. Locals rushed to save the dolphins, some of which were extremely weak. Residents worked to stop them from drying out and helped them back into the sea. Dolphins have beached 3 times in this region northeast of Tokyo in the past 15 years.
There's a new study that shows there's actually a benefit for putting on the pounds later in life.
And why stroke patients are at risk for something else after their recovery. Your health.
Technology in the classroom could help your child learn. Researchers from Northwestern University observed a group of kindergarten students in 3 classrooms. One had iPads for each student, another had students share iPads, and the third had no iPads at all. At the end of the academic year, students in the shared iPad classrooms did significantly better on spring achievement tests than other students, regardless of student demographics. According to a new study, people who suffer a stroke are at an increased risk of suicide. A Swedish study shows stroke patients were twice as likely to commit suicide as people in the general population, with the highest risk occurring in the first 2 years after a stroke. Suicide rates were especially high among patients under age 55, people who lived alone, and those who had lower income and education levels. Packing on a little extra weight in middle age could actually lower the risk of dementia later in life. British researchers analyzed medical records of almost 2 million people in their 50s and followed them for about 9 years. They found people who were underweight were a third more likely to develop dementia than their peers with a healthy body mass index. And as a person's weight increased, their dementia rate risk decreased.
In the aftermath of yesterday's severe weather, we found out that not all mid-Missouri towns have tornado sirens. After the break, we'll share your thoughts on severe weather safety in today's talk. We told you earlier that the town of Martinsburg revealed its new tornado siren today, just 1 day after severe weather rolled through mid-Missouri and part of Illinois. So we asked you on our Facebook page if your town had a tornado siren, and if not, if you feel safe in severe weather. Keith Perez says, nah, because by the time it blares, it may already be too late. Take a dark, solid cloud seriously, keep an eye on the radar, and you'll survive. Judy Winder Atkinson says, yes, they scare the bejesus out of me. And Christina Lloyd says, the new system is a blessing for the town. Thanks to all that have made it possible. We'll be right back after this.
Today, a judge sentenced Casey Lewis for his role as the hitman in the Brian Daniels murder-for-hire case exactly 2 years to the day after Daniels was murdered. KOMU-8's Phil Bergman is live in Columbia to tell us about the sentencing.
Casey Lewis was sentenced to life in prison today without the possibility of parole. Now, Casey Lewis was the hitman in the Brian Daniels murder-for-hire case that has been taking place over the past 2 years. During the trial today and the sentencing, Lewis's attorney did ask for a retrial, but that was denied by the judge. As well, I talked to Lewis's attorney afterwards, and he says that he does plan on appealing this sentence, and that will happen 10 days from now. Today is also a very important day in the Lewis case. It is exactly 2 years since the day Brian Daniels was killed inside of his home. Reporting live from Boone County Courthouse in Columbia, Phil Bergman, KOMU-8 News.
Here's what we're following for KOMU-8 News at 6. A new bill could require parents to be notified if there are children in their child's school or daycare who have not been vaccinated.
We'll take a look at the bill's critics and supporters and how many feel it could be a violation of privacy.
Churchill Downs has a few new safety precautions ahead of this year's Kentucky Derby, and a few of their banned items might surprise you. New items on the list this year include selfie sticks, as well as remote-controlled aircraft. That includes drones. You can't bring your drone to the Derby. Also, beginning this year, spectators in attendance will not be allowed to re-enter after they leave the grounds. They hope that that policy change will reduce wait times at the entrance gates.
And we're going to cool down to right around 42 degrees overnight tonight. Winds will die down later on this evening. We're looking at a pretty calm and cool evening for us. Taking a look at your Saturday, we're going to warm up to 68 degrees. Sunday, we have a chance for some thunderstorms. Could be severe. We're still tracking that right now.
All right, that's our time for now. Thanks for joining us.
Have a great night.